Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining. My name is Jeff Rock, and welcome to another D. Hilton Associates webinar. Today, we've got a great topic, and given the turnout, I think you guys think it's a great topic as well. Top of mind for a lot of things. You showed up. Congratulations. We'll introduce John in a little bit. He's jumping the gun here, but you know he's here. Today, we're going to be talking about compensation strategies to address the rising inflation. Something that I think John and I are fielding at least, 2 calls a day about, something that's on top of mind of everyone. We're going to try to keep this presentation to about 45, 50 minutes to allow time for questions. But first, let me go through a couple of administrative items while everybody settles in for the presentation. This webinar will be recorded, and it will be posted on our website at dhilton.com within a few days. Give us a little bit of time to get that situated and get that up there. So if you do miss anything or would like to go back and watch anything through the presentation, you'll certainly have an opportunity to do that. All of our other webinars are on there as well. Lots of great content, lots of good stuff to go through, and I highly recommend taking the time to go through some of that as well. Following the presentation, you will receive an email follow-up that will give you a link to the webinar when it's posted, as well as a link to download the slide deck. So all the stuff that we'll be talking about today, we'll actually have that available for you to download. Last but not least, you'll also receive a survey at the end of it. Let us know how we're doing. Take a couple moments to fill out that survey. Also gives you an opportunity to recommend another topic or something along that line, something that might be top of mind for you that we haven't discussed yet. We're always open to suggestions of what is very important to you as well. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce John Andrews. How are you, John?
I'm doing great. How you doing, Jeff?
So far, so good. I'm excited about this one.
All right. Well, let's get started. First of all, thanks for everybody participating. Fire the questions away, because I hope, if you're having a specific issue in your community, there's a good chance it's happening around the country. So let's don't be afraid to share. And I think we built some time into the process.
And that's a great point, John. If you do have questions through this process, please feel free to use the Q&A section. The Q&A section goes right to us. If you want to post a question in the chat, that goes to us initially as well, but you can change that to all participants. So if you do want to post a question to all the participants, you can do that as well.
Okay, let's get going on our slide deck here and show you what we've been coming up with. So before we get started, I have to tell you, you see in the bottom the little emoji with the tear? This is the first time in the history of any presentation I've ever used an emoji, and it'll be the last time I use an emoji.
Oh, all right.
So my wife told me a long time ago, she goes, we will have to reevaluate our relationship if you ever send me texts with emoji, because she doesn't like them. I said, okay, duly noted. And then I know all the kids do it. And then literally this morning into the work, there was something on the radio that said, this generation has stopped using smiley faces and cry faces. So I'm so out of it.
It is.
So this is the last
the genesis and the end of it.
Yeah,
Congratulations.
So, I'd probably take a little selfie with it.
This is a new era.
But today's presentation, we're really going to be talking about 2 things. There is light at the end of the tunnel. Remember, this is our 5th once-in-a-lifetime financial crisis that D. Hilton's been through, and the parallels are unbelievable. So we're going to go through that to kind of pep everybody up. And the other thing, this is all about empathy. You know, in our culture, in our Canadian culture, we've always had a mission to be there for the members when times are tough or when they're going through rough spots and they needed financial stability. We were there. We've committed that to our employees, and this is a time where we're going to have to step up. So I've got some good news throughout this presentation, and I'm going to show you that I do think there's light at the end of the tunnel. But let's start with what empathy looks like. So look at the left, just as a quick scenario, what we're dealing with inflation today. If you don't get a 4.5% or greater raise, you're losing ground in your paycheck. So if you're a $20 an hour employee in 2020, you made $41,600. Kelly Blue Book said you could afford a $41,000 car. If you get a 5% raise, high five, you go to $43,680. And guess what? You can't afford a car because the car went up from 41 to 47. So, if we're going to look at empathy, it's what people are putting in the gas tank to get to work, what it's costing for groceries, what it's costing for daycare. All of those things are what is creating additional stress for our employees. So it's not about the great resignation. It's how do they deal with today's situation. When we looked at mental health for the last 5 years, how many employees are losing sleep over their financial situation, financial worries. Guess what? We just piled another layer of woes upon them. So if we're going to be an employer of choice, if we're going to show true empathy, it's got to come address how are we going to address these types of things: getting to work, getting food on the table, and and if it's desperation, they're moving to other jobs. But I think there's some strategies that we looked at. So with that said, thanks you everybody for participating in our survey, and we're going to walk through that in a second here. But I want to just kind of set the ground of what we're seeing out there. So history lesson, because I always like to start with history. Did you like history?
I loved history.
Okay.
I was a part of it.
Okay, dad joke number one.
I'm getting my quota in here.
Really, when cost of living came up a concept right after World War II, look, we had a lot of commodity challenges. We didn't have as many people in the workforce. Inflation was crazy, so government said we're shutting down wages. We froze wages. And so companies trying to keep people, they had great resignation back then because, new jobs, people could go to new jobs. So that's when employee benefits became part of the package. And part of the package became cost of living raises. So when they looked at all that documentation, what you can't do, some creative person says, well, inflation, can't we give a little bit more? And then the unions kind of championed that, and that's why the idea of COLA came from. And then the next time it reared its ugly head was in the 70s and early 80s. Inflation was like 3 and 14%. So we've been tracking this since '85, and literally when inflation moved up, the merit increase, for meets expectation satisfactory, always was aligned with that number.
Mm-hmm.
When we got into the teens, the CFO said,
Yeah.
okay, we got to stop. And then we had this lovely period where inflation came down, 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 down. And that's why that magical 3% came. CFOs just plug that in year after year after year. You'll see that in our comp forecast. We'll have the world at work chart, and it spikes into the 7, 8s, and it comes down, for last 5, 6, 7 years because of that. What did we say, Jeff, in our comp forecast for 22?
Lots of things.
Well, but when it comes to inflation.
It's going to, it pegs right along with that increase, and we're going to see that continually increase here.
We tell people you cannot put 3%.
Yeah, 3% wasn't going to cut it.
And so now we're dealing with that. And now we did think it was going to be transitory inflation, and that we were going to come back, and it's going to take a little longer. So we have to really to put more money into the budget. Okay. Now, how does the banking world deal with that? They do the headlines with, we're going to pay $18, $21 an hour as a minimum salary.
Up to $24 an hour.
But for how many employees, Jeff?
Exactly.
Not all the ones that are here today.
No.
They're going to do their slashing and burning, and then they'll have the people that are left will be doing twice and triple the work for a wage. And guess what? That's going to be pretty tough situation for folks.
And it's a well done marketing campaign, because essentially what you just said is the salary range. You said we're going to pay from this up to, and if you look at your salary ranges, how many people are knocking on the top of that salary range?
Well, so as we go into 23. When we do our comp forecast, we're going to have to really look at this. How do we not lose ground to inflation? We know from an economic perspective, we can't go meet 7, maybe not 9, not whatever the number is going to be eventually. But it's going to be an and, not an or solution. It's going to be, we need to move salaries up, and we need to make sure the employee benefits there, and we need to maintain our culture. Don't lose our culture on this. So right now, the perception is so much more important than reality. Everybody can go on the internet and pull a salary, right? I have a buddy that makes $200,000 because I saw it on the internet.
Yeah, always.
And so right now, when I look at budgets in other industries, only 2 out of 3 didn't put any type of inflation factor because they were just dead set on that 3% number. So what we've always said is communication and empathy are going to be very, very important going forward.
Yeah. And we've been harping on this for a while with transparency. I mean, the whole importance of understanding how you get paid, how your pay philosophy comes into play. And we'll dig a little bit further into that as well.
But the idea is that if your employee feels that it's not fair in relation to, Jeff makes so much more money than me, that's not fair. Or that other department, they're the golden child, that's not fair. Or I have the buddy that's making so much money in the marketplace, that's not fair. Even if that's 100% false, it might as well be true.
Yep, perception is reality.
And the idea is, we work so hard, and I know all our clients do. They want to be so fair, and they want to be so pro-employee. And then if we fall off the cliff and don't communicate it and don't be transparent, it might as well, all that work goes for nothing.
Yeah. And I think this is a big distinction here of what is fair and what is equitable.
Yeah.
And a lot of times, we're judging, hey, that's not fair, but we have to have that conversation about what is equitable, how that comes to play. And that's going to come into play a lot more in this case, I think.
I think so. So the bottom line is if we don't address inflation, you will be part of the Great Resignation, no question about it. Employees, when I say as little as 10 or 15% increases, we're looking total package.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so it could be 4 or 5 or 6%, 8% in the base pay, and then something, maybe a bonus or something to get them there. So, it's not out of reach. But I think the market's going to come back to us. I'm going to show you that in just a second. So, the story is if we can get that empathy, if we can really, pitch our total rewards package, we're going to get people to come back to the fold.
Yeah, and I think that total rewards reporting is going to become extremely. It's always been important.
Well, we have states around the country that are mandating, the offers. You have to tell folks about
The ranges,
what's going to pay.
Mm-hmm.
That's where the up to is really going to be misleading.
Up to $400,000. That's a very big range.
But our 3-point strategy on this is you need to be proactive on your communication. You need to be more frequent than you ever have before, and it needs to be done by the frontline supervisor.
Mm-hmm.
CEOs need to do their part, but they need to make sure that they have given the autonomy to frontline managers to explain this. Okay, we have great HR folks, we have great HR teams, but inherently, if we have a weak frontline supervisor, that conflict avoider, doesn't do well on evaluations of their folks, doesn't seem to carry the party line, so to speak. We hear things like, well, don't look at me. I really fought for you, but they're only giving them 3% raises.
Mm-hmm.
And, I don't think it's great either.
And it becomes that us and them that we're always so worried about.
The us versus them is great. I mean, congratulations. Now you're a supervisor. Congratulations. You're part of them.
Us. Switch it up here.
Yeah. So the things that, when it comes to communications, I think when we look at this bullet list here, the idea that we address the misconceptions about disparities. Mortgage is a great example of this. They'll see, my buddy earned up to $200,000. Okay, that mortgage job in a mortgage broker in the field that's not affiliated with the credit union is a totally different job than a credit union. Credit union has a great brand. Members will actually open the email, take the call, respond to advertising. And if that broker doesn't sell anything this month, his kids don't eat. Okay, and credit unions rarely are set up with that type of all or nothing. So when you see an up to number, it's very, very, very misleading. So the more that you have education on your competitors, so you can compare and contrast, I think it's very important. The second thing is, go to the marketplace, like what we do for our clients, and tell them what's out there. I have no problem doing that, but there's an asterisk. It's not one piece. It's the total. It's a total compensation picture. So you shouldn't be afraid to address that and tackle that head on.
Yeah, it's being talked about whether you are a part of that conversation. If you lead that conversation, you can change and kind of lead the direction of that rather than, well, hey, the rumor mill, the conversations are happening without you. You're not being a part of it. Mm-hmm. So you might as well go ahead and step in and start having that conversation.
We've talked about some of our clients work at Amarillo. Amazon brings one of those fulfillment centers in place.
Yeah, the warehouses there.
They hire 300 people and they do 1 or 2 hours, $1 or $2 more an hour for those employees. And all of a sudden it's the buzz in town. How do you respond to that, Jeff?
Cry in the corner for a little while.
Dad joke number 2. Great. No, what you're doing is, are you ready to work Saturdays, Sundays, holidays because it's a 365-day job? Are you, the unions are making inroads in some of those business from Starbucks to Amazon's to the...
And there's a reason those unions are making those inroads.
Because they're protecting worker rights.
Exactly.
You put great cultures together, environments. So is the grass greener? And I tell you, the psychology of that is you go to that company, you get your first paycheck, and it's bigger than your last paycheck. Okay? Yay. I mean, it's almost flat. You do that second paycheck, and now I have to work Saturday. Oh, I have to work the third, the overnight shift. My boss says I'm not working. There's a camera on me. I can't go to the restroom. And then the third check comes and go, I miss my buddies
Yeah.
at the credit union. We saw that with casinos when the casinos started populating. We see this with Amazon now. And so we see it around the country. So the idea is that there are the misperceptions out there that we need to be ready to talk about those other jobs.
And we're seeing that in the statistics as well. Those that were a part of, the quote unquote great resignation, something like 2/3 of them are already looking for another position. Essentially, the grass, was always greener on the other side until they got over there. Until upon closer inspections, it was serrations and other pointy objects unbecoming the ground cover. And they said, "Whoops! Now I got back."
Take Apple. The most, if that's part of your skill set, it's got to be like Mecca, right? The biggest, coolest place to work ever. And then, half of their employees don't want to come back to work. They, they're think they're not treated where. So that first paycheck, great, but it's that second, third, and when when reality sets in, is it really worth it? Yeah. So right now, 1 out of 2 employees openly talk about salaries. And so we have to be prepared. So whether you want to be transparent or not, you're going to have to deal with it. So, really taking what do you want to share, what a career paths look like, what is the upside to jobs, and then share that with people. What I hate, and I see it all over the place, is when we don't share this information and a great front office employee goes to the back office because they think the grass is greener in our own concept. So we take this awesome member service person and make it a really mediocre back office and flip. Oh, the front, they get all this variable pay. They're special folks. They're the golden children. I want to go be that. But that's not your gift. So we've taken a great person we can count for fulfillment, back office, admin stuff, and put them in front of the members. It dilutes for everyone. And then finally, people want to hear about this stuff monthly now.
Yep.
That's what Gartner research is showing us in the sense that, and they want to hear it from their direct supervisor. So that's why our third point or bullet in the strategy is it's got to be supervisor-led. And so HR folks out there, for everything you're trying to think about as a company-wide statement of where we are, spend that time with that supervisor to handle the tough questions.
They do need some coaching as far as that goes, because there's some cases that supervisor-led area is not good at having these conversations. Everybody gets a little around compensation conversations because we don't want to say the wrong thing. So it is going to take some training. It is going to take some investment in that, making sure that your managers are actually able to have those conversations in a way that needs to happen.
Yeah, and just, again, doing the research for this presentation, we talked about, how we love Buc-ee's. It's the gas station that Texas is now just going all over the country. That's very exciting. But Florence, South Carolina, congratulations. I think you're getting your first Buc-ee's. They're going to pay teller, the cashier, $16 to $18 an hour. They're going to give you 2 weeks of vacation day one, health care, 401k, and that's because you're running the cash register for Buc-ee's. So congratulations and condolences, Florence. But you're going to see that. So why not talk about address that head on and talk about career? Because even in Buc-ee's in a pretty big organization, supervisor, head cashier, what's the career path there?
What's your trajectory?
And it's going to be great for some folks, but not for everybody. And then, as we move on, I think the single thing that's going to keep is your culture. I mean, why do we strive to be an employer of choice? Why do we want to be the best places to work? Why do we invest in all that paperwork to prove and demonstrate and to show our metrics of what we're doing there? Because that count, those intangibles absolutely count. And as you see, as people were leaving the door for the paycheck, and now a lot of companies cannot write that paycheck. The first people in the door, last people in the door are sometimes the first ones to go. So we're going to see that. But again, I think if you upgrade your supervisor's skill set, it's going to be very important as one of your tools in your arsenal to address this.
Yep. And I think that you're absolutely right. The social relations aspect of that, the office, I heard this kind of explained interesting way. The office is no longer for the hard work. The office is for the soft work.
Yeah.
You get this connection, this camaraderie, the culture that's there, and that's the important bit. Keep flaming or keep fanning that flame and keeping that alive is going to be extremely important moving forward.
I know the professionals love the mentoring aspect of being in office. The coaching, counseling. I mean, the folks that really are driven on upward love that. But I've also heard messages where, people, COVID has taught them to have a social network outside of the office, and actually more desirable to have it outside the office. So one of our things that credit unions used to say is we're family, we're great. And that's, not everybody's family worked out so great. And the idea is that we can't really hang our hat on that, but we can have a social aspect to being at the office. And I loved one company, they said it this way is, in the old days, meaning, 18 months ago.
Last year.
The biggest thing for people was to do an offsite. Oh, get out of the office, put the phones down, just get away from the wear and tear and the grind. And some of the younger folks, God, we got to go to an offsite. But most folks said, yeah, that's going to be fun. But now we're trying to position it's an onsite.
Yep. The offsite is now the onsite.
You hybrid people, come on back. We miss you. And so there's just a way that people are couching that makes a lot of sense for today's generation.
Yeah. And I mean, there's a ton of psychology that goes into this, as much as I don't want to get on my soapbox of psychology because it's a conversation I can have for hours. But how you phrase things, how you deliver things, making sure that you have a unified and continuous message, just like that, you changing it. Well, you guys are at home. Yeah. That's your on-site now. So we're going to have an off-site. We're going to bring you in. Yeah. So couching it a completely different way, a unique perspective that resonates people differently, so to speak.
And as for the folks out there that haven't been to a D. Hilton presentation, you need to know that my daughter's a psychiatrist and my sister-in-law's a psychiatrist, so it's always fun at the Andrews Thanksgiving. So come on, we can talk about all of these things.
We can unearth a lot of things real quick.
Yeah. So let's get into the survey real quick. So that sets the stage of why we think the frontline supervisor is going to be important in this deal. The idea is that we need to know the market. We need to be proactive. So this is the survey. First of all, thanks, guys, for filling this out. This data is literally 12 days old.
Yep.
And I talked to our research director, Hillary, some of you have met at webinars before. We're gonna replicate this study right after Thanksgiving. So if you didn't participate, we want you to get in on this because we want to do linear from 2, but we want to kind of end the year as you do planning is what do you think is going to happen in 23? So it will be hot off the press, but we need your help. So in this study, we had about a 10-day window, 120 credit unions participated, enough definitely to have a representative sample of the industry. And then we have on the left side of the chart here, we'll show you the distribution of who, it skews towards the billion-dollar credit unions, and then we have a nice representation all the way down to 100. Before Jeff gets into the slide, just let you know, at the back end of this presentation, we're not going to go through it today because of time, but we have a lot of this data broken down by these asset bands and also by head count, number of employees. So if you scratch your head and said, I don't know if that applies to me, there might be a better way to look at that. So, but you'll have that when we share the deck with you.
Yeah, that'll be in the back of the deck that we won't go through today. We're going to go over the high level stuff, but we want to be able to touch on those pieces. So we asked essentially, what are you doing for inflation? Are you actually touching points on anything? And the vast majority right now looking at cash is king. We're going to be able to apply cash directly to those that are hurting or in a tough situation right now.
Look, gas cards is 5%, and that's something D. Hilton did. A handwritten note from David Hilton says, hey, I know it's costing more to get here. Here's something to help out. Mm-hmm. $100, not a big deal, but the handwritten note, huge.
Huge, absolutely huge.
And so this discretionary, I'm going to tie this to empathy. It's like, this isn't going to cure all your ills. It's not going to address all your problems, but at least we're trying to understand, and we don't want to be part of the problem, but this is what we do. So that's why, that's the biggest thing. So it's not the amount. It's the idea that it's the action.
And never underestimate the power of a small gesture like that. I'm not talking about the cash in this case because everybody could appreciate that, but the handwritten note.
Yeah.
I remember back at a large financial institution that I was at, when you get promoted to a banking officer, the executive team would handwrite a note and have it delivered to you. So you would actually have Kelly King saying, congratulations, we do truly appreciate what you're bringing to the organization, and we wanted to recognize that and note that you have been promoted to a banking officer. You got this little handwritten note. That stayed on my desk for the longest time. This was early in my career, so I was like, that was amazing. And that still, to this day, has a resonant impact on me.
Definitely something to save. Okay. And then let's go through that list again.
So financial planning, of course, I think this is something that we are preeminently qualified to be able to provide. It's not such much a matter of, okay, here's a bunch of cash. Okay, let's talk about how to deal with the stuff that you have now. And I mean,
you have these programs and resources for your members.
Yeah.
We need to redouble that and put that to our employees. Like, look, are you budgeting? Are you looking for the best deals? Can we help you make some discounts as you go through this list? So these are the things that people are doing right now.
Yep. And an increased PTO is another one that we're seeing pretty commonly as well. The big caveat to that is every time I talk about the PTO, we've seen an increase in PTO, but we've seen a decrease in using the PTO.
Yeah.
Please make sure they know it's okay to take PTO as they need it, because it's going to be a very, very important part of that.
Well, Goldman Sachs yesterday said unlimited PTO for their executives.
Mm-hmm.
And I guarantee you, like 1% of executives are going to use unlimited PTO because, it's such a cutthroat business. So you go through this list. These are things people are using. Key thing, 20% of folks are not doing anything now. So is it because they're in the works or they're thinking they're just going to ride it out? So that's why we want to do that post-survey after Thanksgiving to see if more people have stepped up with these things. Now, the less than 5%, family forming, whether it's adoption, those types of things, massages, childcare, mortgage, down payments, elder. I think those are going to come up because those are big chunks of family budgets, and for the folks that need them, that would be great.
Yeah, and I think this is a lot of what they're kind of doing now, or at least planning to do in an immediate future. And you can kind of see the easiest solution right now is throw money at it.
Yeah.
Is that the best solution? Well, it's a short-term solution.
It's an and. It's not.
It's an and, exactly. So we have to talk about those other pieces.
So we had a question come up that said, "Is this data always been there, or is this in response to inflation?" And the way we frame the question is, are you doing these things, to in response to inflation going up? So these are new things. And then we had another question that came out of this that says, are people making adjustments for inflation? Might as well talk about that now as we go through the list.
Yep.
So when you put a merit increase matrix together, the typical thinking is you want, if it's a 5-point scale, 3 means meets expectations, satisfactory, not supposed to use those words, but whatever it is, baseline acceptable performance. That should always equal inflation in the old days. Because you want to make that a commitment to the employees. If you do your job, you're never losing ground. Bread's going to cost the same next year as it does this year. Well, now we're in the 7s, and we have people saying, well, we can't commit to 7, 8, 9, 7% for a 3% raise and 9% for a 4% raise. So that's why we're saying we need to move those off of the 3. We encourage people to do that, but I don't think you need to go match the midpoint at that. At 7 is where we start raises going forward. I think we got to move it off of 3, but we don't need to be 7. And then the next question that came up is, how are you dealing with compression? Well, the problem that we've seen, or the challenge in the last 18 months with Great Resignation, is, oh my gosh, we're losing mortgage people. So you go take care of the mortgage job family. Oh, and then, oh my gosh, it's this department. And you really got to commit to your whole structure, because every time you make an adjustment for one employee, you got compression, right?
Right.
You move them close to a supervisor, or you move them closer to a person in another department, and we get to perceived unfairness. Mm-hmm. So I guess our suggestion is don't take the short route or the easy way out by dealing one job. Every one of those moves impacts your whole structure.
Yeah, but don't just misconstrue that as an unnecessary need to be egalitarian. I mean, obviously we need to focus on the critical workforces, but the overreaction to certain situations without understanding the repercussions of moving that one and not the other.
Yeah, we're gonna hit that hard in our comp forecast for next year. Is the idea critical workforce has to be defined.
Yep.
The CFOs of the world are not just going to give you unlimited budget. So whatever you get, how are you going to spend it the best way?
Who provides the most value? The disproportionate value to the organization. We need to be able to reward them. It's reward and recognition. It's not compensation. Yeah. It's rewarding and recognizing you for your contribution to the organization.
So as you start to go into budget season for 23, and you put your merit matrix together, if you start with 3 because you've seen that for the last 5 years. That's probably not going to cut it.
Yeah, that's where to start. You don't write it down. That's where to start. It
Yeah.
goes up from there.
Yeah, but I'm not saying you do, seven is
yeah.
the start. We're going to have to do something higher than 3, but inflation ticked down a little bit, but who knows what it's going to do. I don't want to predict that.
Like every consultant just got exceedingly happy, like, oh boy, a chance to do a 9-box. We're going to find the critical workforce here. But I mean, that's where that goes. If you have a 6% budget, 7% of that should go to the critical workforce, and then on down there from as your performance metric indicates.
And so I'm going to tie this back together, Jeff. Most important person in this job, in this process, frontline supervisor.
Absolutely.
They're doing performance management. They gotta prove to us that employee A provides significant more value than B. They can't take the old school thing. Well, they all worked really hard. I want to give them all.
Everybody's
the
a
same.
5.
Are they?
No,
I didn't.
no, definitely not. But some supervisors are certainly sure that their entire team is a 5 across the board.
Yeah, and that's just gonna. It just exacerbates the problem we have when we have resource competition at this point.
And then you start losing, that supervisor starts losing their top people, their best performers, and they go, why? Because we can't pay enough. Well, let's talk about that.
So the second part, the question that was asked about internal compression is, when inflation was flat, you could get away with doing market pricing studies every 2 or 3 years. Because on the market, the market, there's hot spots and things, but the overall structure, let's move it 2%. I mean, times we recommend that over the years.
Absolutely.
What we're saying is, when we're in these times, every year market pricing studies might make more sense. And I go back from personal experience, .com era, the late 90s. Wage inflation in San Jose, Silicon Valley, was 16% a year. I mean, if you flip burgers at Burger King, you were making 16% in December more than you were doing in January. That's how fast it was moving. We were doing market studies quarterly for some people.
Mm-hmm.
We did that with Hurricane Katrina. We were paying people, if you worked a week, we'd pay you for 2 weeks. But please show up next week.
We'd love to see you on Monday.
So I think we're back in this little bubble right now where the Great Resignation, the fintech expansion, the ridiculous amount of money has been thrown at startups. It's drying up.
Yep.
And so they're going to come back to us, but we have to. It's an and, right? We need to do something with merit matrix. We need to make sure that we're being competitive with the whole workforce and making sure we keep that culture. So our next thing is flexible work schedules.
And this is one of those obvious, very, very hot topics. And you can tell that it's not something that we've been very good at putting a formalized process with, because we essentially say, well, it's at the supervisor's discretion. That is a very big pro and a con, depending on how you look at this. The pro is, giving supervisors the authority and the autonomy to be able to work with their team, to be able to say what works best. The downside of this is, if it's up to supervisor discretion, if you have a supervisor that is just absolutely against flexible work, even though the organization says it's okay, well, that might be a detriment. So making sure to keep an eye on exactly how that's being applied across the organization.
Here's my challenge with this is, hey, Jeff, don't worry what the company policy is. I got you. Because I don't want to be the person that, whatever the boss says, mandating, compliance to that. But I got you.
I got you, yep.
And what does that lead to when a frontline supervisor says that?
That's our us and them again.
Perception of unfairness.
Yep.
So even though you got a great game plan of hybrid, we're going to be here, certain amounts of days, we're all going to be in the office or whatever. If you one supervisor, don't worry about it. And that's what we would hope HR is going to be monitoring is you're part of us. And you're going to be real consistent on how you apply that.
But also, the other thing that I found really interesting about this is just how many organizations are doing 100% or 50% remote. I mean, 2 years ago, this was absolutely unheard of. There was no reason whatsoever that this could ever happen. So we're actually seeing that. People are actually saying 100% remote.
Yeah, and then I have an update on my sister-in-law, and the psychiatrist. She works for the association that accredits medical schools around the world. And she's on the leadership team there, and they put a committee together for I've told this story before, but I have the conclusion of the story. So a committee got together, and they said, well, we have 5 options. You can work from home 1 day a week, 2 days, second option 2 days a week, third option 3 days a week, fourth option 4 days a week, and fifth option 5 days a week. Great committee
Covered
work.
all the bases there. Thank you. How much did we pay them?
Yeah, exactly. So first date. It's 3 weeks ago, first day back in the office after committing this in Chicago. Super spreader event in the first all company event. Guess who's back at home 5 days a week? So I just want to let you know.
Oh man.
That's how.
And
they dealt
actually
with it.
on that slide, the other is just that.
Yeah.
They don't have a work remote policy, but if there is a pandemic issue or a doctor's visit, that was the most common other of, if people get sick, we're going back remote.
Yeah.
So one question of are certain industries such as IT more remote than others? IT is extremely hard to deal with right now because they are, for the most part, especially in their head, able to go remote, which is really interesting because I have developer buddies in California working at large gaming organizations, things along that nature, and they are absolutely not remote. They're like, the development can't be done remote. You guys have to still come in. But every one of them on the team thinks that's ludicrous. We could do this without being here.
And this just in, Microsoft has frozen all engineers.
Oh, right.
They're not hiring engineers right now.
Nothing.
So, like I said, are they going to come back to us? That's a little bit of the tip of the iceberg there. Of what we're seeing. We had a question, is the flexible work schedule based on our survey? Yeah, that's not other industries, that's us. That's what the slide that we just put up was from our credit union responses.
Yep.
Now, the genesis of the question is IT, can they be remote or, something to that effect. It goes back to what Jeff and I talked about, cost of labor versus cost of living. If you're in an area where the skill set just doesn't exist, why would you not consider other options? But if you're in an area where there's a ton of this supply of this, and in some areas there's going to be more, as what we're seeing as the layoffs that are coming, maybe it's a chance to see if you can get them on your terms. So don't give up on that.
And we've seen other industries or other areas go remote as well. I mean, think about accounting. Accounting is another one. We've seen the market value continue to increase because they can broadcast that they can do accounting anywhere. Yeah. So it has become a little bit more difficult on certain aspects. So the answer of that is yes, there are certain industries that are certainly more seeing remote work much more often.
And we had a question, was there disparity by geography? That's the cost of labor versus cost of living question right now. So, I can say the survey is going to, there's going to be this correlation. If there's not the labor there, guess what? You're going to see that exploring a lot of these more aggressively than other areas.
There you go.
So next slide.
So breaking down that, essentially what we just talked about there, as far as two different groups, this is 500 to 999 million, and then 1 billion plus is the blue bars, just to show that there is a little bit of discrepancy, or not too much of a discrepancy between that. So it's not just the bigger organizations are the only ones offering remote or anything along that nature. It's pretty universal across the board.
And when you get this deck, you'll see the other asset bands as well.
Yep. And basically, you can dive into the data on the later slides there. Yeah. The coverage, as far as that goes, cost coverage, credit unions, for the most part, said when you're going to work remote, we're going to go ahead and take care of what you need to be able to do that work. Not too often, you can see down at the bottom that the employees had to cover all cost of that equipment.
And what was really cool to me, 2020 on was that's not even a thought. Absolutely making a commitment, no matter what our budgets were. They put the tools in employees' hands, which was nice to see.
Yeah, that was absolutely wonderful. Seeing that digital transformation, or it was actually just a transition. It really wasn't a transformation.
The big challenge was Office Max. Do you have
do you have any computers?
Nope.
But eBay Black Market was a way to go there for the laptop from 1920. Here you go, enjoy. All right, so this is a slide that I absolutely love to see. This is another piece of that puzzle that we talked about. This is the time to be cross-training. This is the time to be upskilling. This is the time to be investing in your individuals. And I always go back to that old quote. I think it's Richard Branson said, train your individuals so well that they could leave at any moment, but treat them so well that they don't want to. And that's this adage here that a lot of organizations are focusing on the education piece, cross-training opportunities, other development opportunities. So important, I think, to be able to one, cross-train, and two, really expand the capabilities of those individuals.
Yeah. I had a couple questions here on when you're setting pay structures based on remote workers. We actually have some material, Jeff, we've done in a webinar before that talks about our strategy of making bands anchored to your core location. And so instead of trying to do city pairs, no matter where they are, just having 4 bands to keep it. We need to get that out there too for folks to see that again.
It's almost as if we've talked about a lot of this throughout the year.
No, we have, and we just need to keep getting that up to date for you guys. And then questions about when you send people home, do we pay for home internet? And I think one of the slides says, I mean, it's like less than 10%. It's not an emerging, but it's something, again, that a value-added piece that I think could be a low-cost, high-return type of thing.
Yep. I mean, you think about the internet costs are, what, $100 at least a month for high-speed internet nowadays. So being some kind of subsidy for that.
Jeff, my neighbor, I got his pass. It's awesome.
That Wi-Fi, yo.
Yeah, you just got to open your window. You got everything you need. He's a great guy.
There
But he's
you
moving.
go.
I don't know what the new neighbor is going to be.
You're in trouble now. Welcome to the rest of us there. All right, healthcare premiums. This is something that we see a lot of the large, big companies really addressing and looking at as a way to say, okay, well, we can't increase salaries perhaps, but perhaps we could reduce the cost of healthcare premiums. For the most part, not so much in credit unions. We've kept the healthcare premiums the same. Healthcare premiums are one of those things that it lags inflation quite a bit. So now is the time to be able to start negotiating, trying to get those rates down if possible, something along that line. Talk to your healthcare provider, see if you can offer better things, or start talking about investing more in that to transition those savings to your employees.
And here's what I talked about. What I mean by transparency and educating your workforce. If a single mom with 2 kids moves to another place for $1 an hour and her healthcare costs go up more than $1, that's on us.
Or they have to wait for healthcare coverage because it's 30 days or
and that's when the kid breaks your arm.
Exactly. There's a lot of those little things.
So shame on us if we're not being out there. That's the frontline supervisor. That's HR. That's company-wide meetings to make sure we're doing. HR, you've got your hands full, I know, of trying to negotiate rates on and on and on. But with that said, some of the big firms which have some buying power, one of the messages like KPMG or the accounting firm, they actually reduced 10%. They took more of this shift. So again, whole experience, whole culture, whole total rewards, not just $1 an hour.
Yep. And that's the other thing as well. I love how you've illustrated that, because the cost of changing positions for an individual, they don't see all that. There could be moving costs, there could be equipment they need to deal with, all the other piece, and it could actually end up being a wash and a lot of time invested. And shame on us for not really illustrating that on the front end very quickly. Okay, study frequency. So when are you going to be checking in on the market to look at what's happening with salaries? This is the planned. This is what people are actually planning moving forward, not what they're doing now. So for the most part, there is a lot of people shifting towards we're going to be looking at every year. This was actually surprising to me because there's a lot of times that I'm battling to get people on at least looking at the market every other year. They say, we can do it 3 or 4 years. It's not so much the case anymore.
Yeah, Again, I go back to that correlation between inflation and its impact. And we had a nice long run, and I think we're going to have to go back to looking with more frequency. Again, now we'll look at this again at the end of the year and see if more people are determining that, or it's going to stay the flat. So we'll compare and contrast.
And selfless plug, if you ever need any help with this, I'm your guy. Happy to help out.
He's one of your guys.
One of your guys. That's true.
There's no Jeff in team. We've had that. So what I talked about, education and transparency, when you look at kind of the all-in numbers, and people are not doubling their salaries like they do in the soap operas, it's between 8 and 6%. If we can come up with 2 or 3, 4% more in these merit increases, that might be enough to kind of stem the tide. Now, this is kind of, on the left side, it's kind of my career. When we did the 80s and 90s, it was all about internal equity. That's where we did point factor systems to say if you have a 4-year degree, you're worth more than a 2-year degree. And if you have 10 years of experience, you're worth more than 8. And we'd have all these committee meetings to justify why this job should be higher. We did the classic of, let's redo the job descriptions to show them it's more important. And education and tenure were trumps. But then we got into the dot-com era, the bubble. And as we were debating this around the table, employees were leaving out the back door for money. But now we're back to supply and demand and market based, and that's why we've seen this evolution. But we also see people kind of fearing committing to increases in the merit increases because what if it's viewed as an entitlement? We have worked so hard as an industry to become a sales and service culture, a pay for performance culture, and now we're just going to be throwing money because the market inflation's up, and that's a head scratcher because it's in conflict with some of our core values of how we want to reward and recognize people. And then the second question is, well, if we give 6% this year, they're going to expect 6% every year. We can't sustain that. What we're talking about today does not erode pay for performance. Okay, people come along. We will make these adjustments for those employees that do a good job for the members. So when you talk about critical workforce, the ability to say we're not egalitarian. We're going to make these differences because we have limited budgets, and I want to protect those people first. And I'm not being Scrooge. They all have to move, but I need to make sure that those key contributors are getting it first.
Some need to move more.
It will not derail pay for performance.
Right.
But it's an and. We need to do this to keep other employers out of the mix, and then we need to make sure we're doing good performance management, recognition, and some of these other plans.
Because right now, I mean, I watch my LinkedIn feed of how many people have gotten recruitment jobs. They are hiring recruiters, so that means they are going out and targeting people. So you need to be defending your people from those external threats because other companies are really bringing in a lot of recruiters to find talent.
I mean, they actually have this template on LinkedIn that says, "Hey, I got a new job. I'm starting Monday." And you stick your picture in there like you're a first grader. I hate those.
I graduated.
I hate those. We know there's a Mercer study that 42% of workers are asking for something to help with rising costs. In the past it was they just left and didn't tell you, but we're literally with our newer generations, they're going to let you know. So being transparent, having frontline supervisors address that is going to be a win. They're going to stay for culture. So these other things that we're seeing, now this is not from our study, but we see other industries looking at increasing 401k matches, looking at retention, upping the variable pay, flexibility, the work environments. We've seen a 60% increase in counteroffers. You go back to the 80s and 90s, if they want another job, hit the bricks.
Yeah.
We're not having a party. We're just moving on because there's 5 other resumes just dying to do your job. Not there anymore. We did that in the 2000s. Plenty of people want your job. And now we're seeing counter because the cost of training, cost of recruiting, cost of integrating back in or the onboarding process.
With a lot of final straw situations.
And then beating or matching offers 30%. Okay? So the idea is that if you have paid transparency and you know what the other offer is, at least you have some type of way to negotiate.
And I don't have the exact number of the survey, so I'm not going to quote the number, but pay transparency goes into so much of if a person believes, if you talk about how your organization does their pay philosophy, we partner with an independent third party, whatever the case may be, they believe it, and then they believe more that they are being paid fairly.
Yeah. We just had a question come up that leads to the next slide. Whoever this is, you need to come on the road with me because this is perfect timing.
Good setup.
So the question was,
you can have my job.
do you see people doing year-end merit increases, evaluate for another mid-year increase based on the current market? Yeah. So things that we're seeing, perception as well as putting money in the pocket. Early direct deposit has been a really positive thing. Is when I first heard about this, I thought this was just another wrapping of a payday loan.
Yep.
But really it is. It's like, hey, if you needed a couple 2 days earlier, when I started at D. Hilton at $24,000 a year, and I had to pay for my own health care at that time, those last couple of days, hey, Mom, I'm going to come on over because I'm hungry.
Your sandwich had one side to it, and two pieces.
Yeah. And I don't want to – I'm not joking about that because in today's, you get to the end of that pay period and then the kid needs medicine or the car needs something. And so to have that type of program gets to that financial stress, can we help out with financial stress? And if people are not worried about that, guess what? They're going to do a better job for the membership. So those types of things. So the question is, we're actually seeing some people in the first 2 years of employment do quarterly and what's twice a year? Biannual or
Yes.
biennial?
Close enough. We'll take it.
Biennial?
It works differently.
Okay.
We're getting nods from
our
the control
producer
room there.
said, that's what Google's for. But we're actually seeing it's kind of let's it can be the exact same money as an annual increase, but give smaller pops because it's going to be the recognition. Hey, you're progressing on your onboarding 2%, and then at mid-year, hey, you're getting the culture, you're learning the stuff, you're cross-trained, good, another 2%. So I think that momentum could help you. Okay?
It's the time value of money.
And then the other one is strategic. Most of the plans that we put together are lag. So the market moves and we react. The market moves, react. That's lag, right? Oh, somebody, thank you, participants. It is called semi-annual. I'll go with that.
It's we're being told Google says biannual. Now we're going to fight this out. We'll figure it out afterwards.
Okay, we're gonna stay after class for that one.
Yes.
Okay. So, getting back to the concept, we are lag, and that's the most conservative position to take. But there's also this concept of lead, and that it should say lead, not lag there. So it's lag, lead. Okay. So on lead, it says we're trying to anticipate what the market's going to be 12 months from now, and then you move to it. And then lead lag says you're going to predict where it's going to be in 6 months. We're going to try to move some of our clients to that lead lag strategy in the next couple cycles to see if we can kind of meet it halfway. Okay, so think of it that way. Those are 3 techniques that we're seeing is to get money in people's hands. It doesn't necessarily
Change
impact
the total amount.
amount. It's just the delivery and the perception of the delivery.
Yeah.
Does it create a little bit more extra work for HR? Yeah, but I mean, this could be a good type of thing. Now, I want to talk about other people's woes because that'll make us feel better.
Your pictures are by far the best, by the way, John.
So this is a unicorn. So everything on Wall Street for the last 2 years is people getting ungodly amounts of money for an idea. This is worse than the .com era. The valuations of companies that haven't made penny one are unbelievable. So is this the definition of obvious? A serious shift in the market requires a serious pivot. Good for you.
You're just missing synergy in there. We've got a couple buzzwords. We're good.
I have to quick story about my wife. She was on a job interview, and she goes, they said silo, synergy, and she said, I felt like I was at a drinking game.
Bingo!
She said, I'd never heard silo said so many times in 45 minutes. I said, okay, let's make it a drinking game. Anyways, if we go back to the list, think of this scenario. What happens when your stock goes from 162 to 15? You know what you do? Peloton. Sex in the City didn't help when the guy died on their bike and then somebody else died on a bike or had a heart attack. But you lay off 2,800 people. And I would assume Peloton was a really awesome place to work and all this energy and we're doing all these great things for health until the boss says, we can't sustain it. What happens if you get laid off by a tweet? This guy thought he was clever. He tweets, painful decision to let go of 87 beloved members of the Cameo Famio. Yeah, there's probably a 2-word response to that I can't say.
Yeah, there you go. Well, you can. We're just going to upset a lot of people.
Okay. But, when I talk about a frontline supervisor running this program, leading this effort for us, and the idea that we want to show our empathy, these are examples of not empathy. But let's go to the fintech space real quick. Okay? Better.com is in the D. Hilton Hall of Shame.
Oh, yeah.
That
This
guy,
national news.
Of course.
Yeah.
The guy, he called his people dolphins. He would yell them with mass emails. He started laying people off during Christmas time, and now he's up to 4,000 he's laid off.
And basically, if you're a part of this webinar, you are part of the team that just got terminated. That was it. They had no idea why they were there.
Oh,
and
Jeff,
that's all it was.
Jeff, it was worse than that. If people looked at their checking account, it said severance, and they weren't even told they were getting laid off. Why did I get this? You know how you have the alerts?
Yeah.
Mobile alerts. Hey, you have a deposit. For what? For what?
Wait a minute.
Great. Hall of Shame. Easy call. Actually, there's this competitor called Selfie, and they do the same thing. They kind of broker on the internet and get people directed to mortgage loans. when you Google Self-Fi, the first thing that comes up says, we did not lay off 900 people. That's another company. They're using that as,
We didn't do it, so you can come over here.
So don't put us in that mix.
Don't put us on blast.
Main Street, another mortgage type group laid off 30% of the staff. The definition was incredibly rough market. Blend, another financial services laid off 200. Why I put these top 3 up here? Oh my gosh, our mortgage department is decimated.
Mm-hmm.
People are leaving for ridiculous amounts of money to work for these startups. Guess what happened?
All that talent.
You got so much talent that left. So boomerangs, keeping track of your alumni, the people left for this. The grass was not greener, or however you want to say it. So with that said, Robinhood 300, Instacart laid off 2,000. They went from a $39 billion valuation as a unicorn to $24 billion. Noom, it's how to lose weight. It's some type of self.
I wouldn't know anything about that.
Yeah, great, Jeff. Yeah, we love you too, and your hair's nice too. We love
Thanks.
all the things about you. But 4,800 people go. Meta, which is Facebook, laid off 4,000. Meta stopped the engineering.
Yeah.
Carvana, the car service 12%. Hopin 12%. Workrise, cutting staff even though they're worth $3 billion on deck. Reef is ghost kitchens where you can, like DoorDash, order some from your favorite stuff. This is just like the .com.
Yep.
Ridiculous valuations. People could just burn through cash until their investors or the adults said we need to actually make money off of this venture eventually. And inflation's not helping them. Ukraine's not helping them. The market's not helping them. And guess who's coming back in the workforce? I could care less what the national number says on unemployment. These are people that we need to go there. But to make it work, we have to be hunters, not gatherers. And we've talked about that a number of times, is in your community, if you have these folks, go after them.
Absolutely.
And
this is a lot of talent that's being released back into the wild.
And I'm going to top it off with Wells Fargo, who's laid off a ton of mortgage people this year. And Wells Fargo is around the country could be considered a competitor. We are carrying out displacements in a transparent and thoughtful manner and providing assistance such as severance and career counseling, which is a fancy way to say, you're available to credit unions. So let's go after some folks that we might have
You have
lost.
been invited to seek excellence elsewhere, and we would like to help you.
Okay, so with that said, I hope today the presentation kind of sent the messages. There's a light at the end of the tunnel. There's work to be done. I want to make sure that we're all looking at the empathy angle as we work with employees, upping the communication, acknowledging what's out there. But I also want you to have these stories that I just told you about these companies that are going to go through this. This is the start. I mean, we looked at this week, and that's every week there's going to be more and more and more. So with that said, thanks for joining us today. I wanted to put a plug in. We're going to do our client symposium in November again. And, the content's going to be great. All of this research is going to be coming out. And also it's my birthday, and we have a heck of a party on my birthday. So we want to make sure everybody comes to my party. And if you need any questions about the agenda, that'll be coming out soon. But we'd love to have everybody show up.
Absolutely.
So we got like couple minutes for questions.
Yeah. One question is, many candidates have gaps in their resumes thanks to the pandemic.
Yeah.
Had D. Hilton seen an increase in this? Is this a problem
Absolutely.
Since the pandemic?
Absolutely. If you're going to be old school about this and, a gap, I found something.
Mm-hmm.
And look, people took that year. They had compensation. They saved up and they took. No, it shouldn't be a flag as it was. They're not a go-getter. It's not because of a situation that they got fired. It's just they took the time off. So don't discount somebody from that. Ask for an explanation, obviously.
Yep, simple as that.
So
I mean, sometimes gaps, it's just a thing. That's it. There's no big problem or issue. There's always a reason along that, and it depends on how they answer that.
But, as we wrap up today, I just want to send the message. There's light at the end of the tunnel. I think we've got some decent strategies to deal with this. I want you to keep your culture. I don't want you to bastardize your culture. We're to help with different strategies. Are we going to have to spend a little bit more on employees? We are. But I want to make sure you get the right dollars in the right hands for the members. And that's what we're committed to do it. So remember, if you didn't fill out this survey, we're going to bug you again and we want you to participate. We've got a few more surveys coming out this year on some different topics. If there's specific things that you want to know about, send us a note, because we're committed to the industry to get the latest and greatest stuff out there in your hands so you can make good decisions. So that's all I'm going to say today, Jeff.
All right. Thank you so much for joining us. We do sincerely appreciate it as always. This has been recorded and will be posted on our website. You will also get a link in an email shortly following this presentation that has a link to download the slide deck. So you'll get that opportunity as well.
Jeff.
Yes.
What did you learn today?
I learned everything. I love doing
There's only
these
one
with
thing you need to
John.
learn. There's no Jeff in team.
That's an important bit. All right, guys. Thank you so much.
All
We
right.
look forward to seeing
All
you
the
again
best. Stay
next time.
safe, guys. All the
Bye-bye.
best.